There's a moment that happens in every emergency room. It's usually around 4 in the morning. The lights are harsh, the family is confused, and I'm standing there trying to explain how someone who seemed perfectly fine 12 hours ago is now fighting for their life. The question is always the same: how did this happen? He was fine at dinner. She seemed normal when we went to bed. We had no warning. And here's what I have to tell them: the part that changes everything. The warning was there. It just wasn't loud. It was hidden in the routine, buried in the ordinary, camouflaged as normal life, and that's exactly what makes it so deadly. I'm Dr. James Whitemore. I've been a cardiovascular surgeon for nearly 2 decades, and in that time I've repaired more damaged hearts than I care to count. But the cases that haunt me aren't the ones that were unavoidable. They're the ones that were completely preventable. The ones where simple changes, things you could implement tonight before you close your eyes, would have altered the entire trajectory. Today I'm going to walk you through 5 of those changes, 5 evening patterns that are silently compromising your heart while you sleep. And more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly how to fix them, because knowledge without action is just anxiety, and you deserve better than that. Let me tell you something that most people don't realize. Your heart doesn't clock out when you fall asleep. It doesn't get a break. What it does is shift into a different operational mode. In a properly functioning system, nighttime brings a natural cardiovascular reset. Blood pressure should drop by roughly 15 to 20% compared to daytime levels. Heart rate decelerates. The vascular walls ease their tension. It's an elegant biological rhythm that's been keeping you alive since birth. But here's the problem. After 60, that elegant system starts to fracture. The vessels lose their elasticity. The pressure regulation becomes unreliable. Hormonal protections that used to guard the heart during sleep begin to fade. And suddenly, the margin for error shrinks dramatically. Think of it like this. During waking hours, your cardiovascular system has redundancies, multiple backup plans, adaptive responses. When night falls, many of those safety nets disappear. Your body is operating on minimal staff. That's why the window between midnight and 6 in the morning is statistically the deadliest time for cardiac events in people over 60. Not during the stress of the workday, not during exercise, the quiet hours, the hours when you think nothing is happening, but your habits from the evening are absolutely happening, and they're determining whether you wake up or not. What I'm about to tell you is what those habits are, and we're starting with the one that almost nobody connects to their heart. Here's a question I want you to think about carefully. When was the last time you sat down to a full dinner and then went to bed within 2 hours? For millions of people over 60, that's not an occasional thing. It's the standard pattern. Dinner at 8 or 9 o'clock? Maybe later. A substantial meal? Potatoes? Bread? Fried food? Dessert? Then the television. Then bed by 10 or 11. I completely understand how it happens. Life is busy. Schedules are complicated. Habits run deep, but I need you to understand what this pattern is doing to your cardiovascular system. When you consume a large meal, your digestive tract requires a massive surge of blood flow to process it. Your heart has to accelerate, blood pressure climbs, and here's the critical detail most people miss. Your triglyceride levels, the fat circulating in your bloodstream, spike dramatically within 2 to 4 hours after eating. Now imagine overlaying that metabolic chaos onto a body that's trying to sleep. Your system is expecting rest. Instead, it's being forced into a cardiovascular sprint, heart pumping hard, pressure elevated, blood thick with fats, all while you're lying motionless in bed. Those two demands, digestion and sleep, are fundamentally incompatible. And in an aging cardiovascular system already dealing with arterial narrowing, that incompatibility has consequences. Research has repeatedly demonstrated that eating close to bedtime correlates with sustained nighttime hypertension, increased reflux that can mimic cardiac symptoms, and a measurably higher incidence of nocturnal cardiovascular events. The solution is remarkably straightforward. Finish your primary meal no later than 6:30 in the evening. If you need something later, keep it minimal, a small portion of protein and vegetables, nothing heavy, nothing fried. Give your heart the window it needs to settle before sleep arrives. Now this next one is where I see the most preventable damage in my practice. If you're over 60 and you're taking medication for hypertension, and statistically more than half of people in your age group are, the timing of that medication is not a minor detail. It's potentially the difference between protection and vulnerability. Most people assume blood pressure is a constant concern. It's not. It follows a rhythm. For most individuals, pressure rises with morning activity, peaks during afternoon hours, and naturally declines at night. But a substantial percentage of older adults don't experience that nighttime decline. Their pressure remains elevated, or worse, it surges during the early morning hours before dawn. This phenomenon is called nocturnal hypertension. Most patients have never heard the term, but it's incredibly dangerous. During sleep, your arterial walls aren't braced for impact. A pressure surge at 3 in the morning hits those walls differently than one at 3 in the afternoon. It's more likely to destabilize vulnerable plaque formations inside the coronary arteries, more likely to trigger clot development, more likely to result in a catastrophic event. If you're taking your blood pressure medication exclusively in the morning, it may be metabolized and weakened by the time you actually need it most. If you forget it altogether, you're leaving yourself completely exposed during the most vulnerable hours. What should you do? Have an explicit conversation with your physician about timing. Ask directly whether your medication should be shifted to evening dosing. There's compelling evidence, including data from the Hygia chronotherapy trial, showing that nighttime administration of antihypertensive medication significantly reduces cardiovascular risk during sleep. That's not a trivial adjustment. That's a conversation that could fundamentally alter your survival odds. Let me ask you something. Do you know someone who snores heavily? A partner, maybe yourself. That grinding, irregular sound that fills the bedroom at night. Most people treat it as background noise, something to joke about, something annoying but harmless. I treat it as a red flag until proven otherwise. Sleep apnea is one of the most underdiagnosed conditions I encounter in patients over 60. Current estimates suggest more than 30% of older adults have it to some degree, and the overwhelming majority have never been evaluated or treated. They have absolutely no idea what it's doing to their cardiovascular system every single night. Here's what an apnea episode actually looks like inside your body. Your airway collapses, breathing stops, 10 seconds, 20, sometimes 40 or more. This can happen dozens of times every hour. Each time, your blood oxygen level plummets. Your brain detects the crisis and triggers an emergency response. Stress hormones flood your system. Adrenaline, cortisol, your heart rate spikes, blood pressure surges. Essentially, your heart is being shocked awake repeatedly while the rest of you remains unconscious. Night after night, year after year. The cumulative damage is not subtle. Sleep apnea is associated with a threefold increase in heart attack risk. It's strongly correlated with atrial fibrillation, a dangerous irregular rhythm that dramatically elevates stroke risk. It accelerates vascular damage, and because it all happens while you're asleep, most people have no awareness until something catastrophic occurs. The warning signs aren't always obvious. Yes, loud snoring is one indicator, but watch for morning headaches, chronic exhaustion despite sleeping a full night, frequent nighttime urination, waking with a dry mouth or gasping sensation. If any of those resonate, request a sleep study from your doctor. The treatment, typically a CPAP device, isn't glamorous. I acknowledge that, but the cardiovascular protection it provides is remarkable. Patients who consistently use CPAP therapy demonstrate measurable drops in blood pressure, reduced arrhythmia rates, and significantly lower cardiac risk. One intervention, enormous impact. This next pattern is driven by perfectly logical reasoning, which is exactly what makes it so insidious. Many people over 60 intentionally restrict their fluid intake in the evening. The motivation makes complete sense. They want to avoid waking up at 2 in the morning to use the bathroom. Interrupted sleep is uncomfortable. Nighttime trips to the bathroom increase fall risk, so they stop drinking after 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I understand the logic completely, but from a cardiovascular perspective, going to bed even mildly dehydrated is a serious risk factor that almost nobody discusses. When you're dehydrated, your blood becomes more viscous, thicker, less fluid. For a young, healthy cardiovascular system, that's manageable. For someone over 60 dealing with arterial plaque and vessel stiffness, it's a completely different equation. Thick blood moves sluggishly through already compromised arteries. It's more prone to clotting. And here's the timing element that most people overlook. During sleep, your heart rate naturally drops, blood circulation slows. Now combine that slower circulation with thicker blood in a body that's been motionless for 7 or 8 hours in vessels that may already be narrowed. That combination, dehydration plus slow heart rate plus immobility plus vascular disease, is precisely why strokes and heart attacks cluster in the early morning hours. The fix is genuinely simple. Drink 8 ounces of water before bed, just 1 glass, enough to prevent your blood from thickening unnecessarily overnight. Keep another glass on your nightstand. When you wake up thirsty at 2 in the morning, your body isn't being inconvenient, it's asking for something your heart desperately needs. And here's the last one, the one that sounds almost too simple to be medically relevant. What temperature is your bedroom at night? I'd be willing to bet you've never once considered it from a cardiac perspective. Most people think about comfort, personal preference, but there's a specific thermal range where your cardiovascular system functions optimally, and outside that range, your heart is working harder than it needs to. When your bedroom is too warm, above 72 degrees Fahrenheit, your body has to actively dissipate heat all night long. Blood vessels dilate, heart rate stays elevated, you lose fluid through sweating, which circles us right back to the dehydration issue, and critically, your sleep quality deteriorates. You spend less time in deep restorative sleep stages where your heart gets its best overnight recovery. Conversely, a bedroom that's genuinely cold, below 65 degrees, creates a different stress. Cold triggers vasoconstriction. Your vessels tighten to preserve core warmth. Blood pressure rises. Your heart has to pump against increased resistance. For someone with existing coronary disease or hypertension, that nighttime pressure elevation is not insignificant. The optimal temperature range for both sleep quality and cardiovascular protection sits between 65 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That window keeps your body thermally neutral, vessels relaxed, heart rate steady and low, sleep deep and uninterrupted. One thermostat adjustment, real protection. Everything I've just described might feel overwhelming, a long list of concerns, but I want you to see it differently. When you assemble all 5 habits together, what you actually have is a simple, practical evening protocol that addresses every single vulnerability. Finish dinner by 6:30. Lean protein, vegetables, moderate carbohydrates. Nothing heavy, nothing late. At 7, take your medications. If you haven't discussed timing with your doctor, make that appointment this week. Evening dosing of blood pressure medication may be significantly more protective than morning dosing. Between 8 and 9, wind down. A short walk, reading, calm conversation, step away from screens. Bright phone displays suppress melatonin and keep your nervous system activated far longer than it should be before sleep. By 9, prepare your bedroom. Adjust the temperature. Set out water. These tasks take 90 seconds. They matter. By 10, you're in bed. And here's one final detail. If you snore or suspect sleep apnea, try sleeping on your side instead of your back. Back sleeping dramatically worsens airway obstruction. A simple position change can reduce apnea episodes significantly while you pursue formal evaluation. Let me be direct with you for a moment, not as someone creating content, as a surgeon. I have been in operating rooms at 3 in the morning working on hearts that stopped because of clots that formed silently overnight. I have had conversations with devastated families who had no idea anything was wrong 12 hours earlier. I have reviewed medical records of people who were planning vacations the week before they died. And case after case, the contributing factors weren't mysterious. They were late dinners, skipped medications, bedrooms that were too hot, bodies that were quietly dehydrating, airways that had been collapsing for years while everyone assumed the snoring was harmless. These aren't exotic risk factors. They're not rare. They're the mundane background of millions of ordinary nights. And that background, accumulated over time, can become a cardiac event that nobody anticipated because nobody knew what to look for. You now know. The question is what you do with this information. Not next month. Tonight. Let me summarize this clearly. 5 habits. 5 fixes. 1. Finish your main meal by 6:30 in the evening. 2. Talk to your doctor specifically about blood pressure medication timing. Ask about evening dosing. That conversation could be the most important medical discussion you have this year. 3. If you snore, wake up exhausted, or have been told you stop breathing during sleep, get evaluated for sleep apnea. At 60 plus, this isn't optional. It's fundamental cardiac care. 4. Drink a glass of water before bed. Keep another on your nightstand. Don't let your blood thicken overnight. 5. Set your bedroom temperature between 65 and 72 degrees. That single number protects your vessels and costs you nothing. Now I want to ask you directly, which of these 5 habits do you recognize in your own life? I genuinely want you to answer in the comments. My guess is at least 2 or 3 hit close to home. You're not alone. Most of my patients see themselves in this list. The difference is you now know what to do. If this video gave you something valuable, share it. There's someone in your life, a spouse, a parent, a friend, someone over 60 who has never connected their evening routine to their heart health. Send this to them. Your heart has been working for you every single second of your entire life. Give it the conditions it needs to keep going. One last thing. Everything I've shared is general medical information based on current research and my clinical experience. It's not a replacement for personalized medical care. Before changing any medication schedule, talk to your physician. That's not legal protection. That's genuine advice from someone who wants you watching this channel 10 years from now. Take care of that heart. Good night.